Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thanks so much for stopping by. Honestly, right now, the Warzone meta is in an incredible place. We can use so many different weapons, so many different setups, and most of them are going to be viable or competitive at the very least. It's been a long time coming, but we're finally at that point where you can use almost whatever you want. And today we're sort of breaking down some of the best underrated or quote-unquote off-meta loadouts. I'd say it's a pretty fine line between what's off-meta and what's meta, just because, like I said, the entire meta, if you want to call it that, is so diverse. But we're basically looking at some loadouts that you won't necessarily see every day, but they're honestly still pretty good. As we go through them all, if you enjoy the video at any point, let me know by dropping a like on it. Goal for this one is going to be 4,000 likes. And of course, if you're new here or if you haven't already subscribed, I am always covering everything going on in COD. News, intel, updates, loadouts, it's all right here. So feel free to subscribe. That way you can always stay up to date. So the first loadout I want to look at here is a combination of the Kilo and the MP7. Definitely like a big throwback loadout, if you will. Obviously, the Kilo was sort of the go-to rifle during like Season 4, Season 5, Season 6 of Modern Warfare in Warzone. This was definitely like the most popular gun in the game at one point. It did receive that nerf that definitely brought it back. Some people started shifting out to other weapons, but even now, this is still a very, very good weapon. You'll find a lot of people using this as like a fully loaded setup, or, just in general, because it's a very easy weapon to use. The recoil is super simple. Its damage is honestly still pretty decent unless you're at like those extreme ranges, because of course, it does have that additional damage drop off now, but overall, the Kilo is definitely still a very viable rifle. Then the MP7, honestly, this is like one of my favorite SMGs in Warzone history. At one point, this was like all I was using on my loadouts. I love this gun just because it feels like it's almost a hybrid in a sense. Obviously, it's an SMG, so it's really good up close. It's got great mobility. Its damage is pretty good. Its TTK is decently competitive, but it also has some surprising range. When you factor in the fact that it doesn't have any recoil, factor in the fact, that sounds weird. Anyways, when you look at the recoil in those medium range fights, it's almost non-existent, so it's very, very easy to stay on target. So you got two very reliable weapons in this setup. Like I said, definitely a throwback one, but honestly still really, really good. So on the Kilo here, I'm running the monolithic suppressor. Of course, you gotta. I've also got the Prowler barrel on there for better range and control, the Commando foregrip for better control, the 60 round mags, then also the blue dot hollow sight as well. Then when it comes to the MP7, I'm running the monolithic suppressor yet again, the recon barrel for better range and control, the tac laser for better speed and stability, the 60 round mags, then also the icon itself, the Stippy Grippy. Now, after that, we've got sort of another throwback one, just in the sense of these are Modern Warfare weapons that you don't see used that much anymore, but this one is also a pretty surprising one in my opinion. It's the SA-87 and the P90. The SA-87 was never a gun that I would think a lot of people would want to use. I still don't think it's necessarily going to be a lot of players' first choice, just because it's not the easiest weapon to use in the world. It is slower because it is an LMG. Then it also has some not so ideal visual recoil. It's like the AMAX, but just, turned up a little bit higher, so it's a bit harder to stay on target. But that said, this thing hits like a truck. The SA-87's TTK is actually very, very competitive. By far one of the most underrated weapons in the game. And then also the P90 is just a very like mid-tier SMG. It's not bad. It's not the best SMG in the game, but it's certainly competitive and viable in this current meta. The recoil, pretty much non-existent, just like the MP7. It's got that larger magazine by default, so that's like an extra attachment slot you can use elsewhere. Its mobility is fantastic. All around, like I said, just a very reliable, overall very, very good SMG. So these two combined, definitely not a setup you'd probably see like people using in tournaments to try and win $100,000. But if you're just trying to use something different, this is a setup that is actually very fun and surprisingly good. So on the SA-87, we've once again got the monolithic suppressor. I've got the factory barrel, the longest barrel, pretty much standard setup there between the muzzle and the barrel there. I've got the Commando foregrip yet again, because like I said, the recoil is not the most ideal in the world. I've also got the 60 round mag, then the VOK 3x optic, since it does help with the control a little bit as well. Then on the P90, I've got the monolithic suppressor yet again, the retribution barrel for better range and control, the tac laser for all the same reasons as on the MP7, the fly strap stock for better mobility, and then also the Stippy Grippy yet again. Next up, this loadout features the M13 and the Modern Warfare AUG as an SMG. The M13 has like this huge player base that just absolutely love this gun, and I don't blame you. It's actually surprisingly good, but I still feel like it's underutilized in the sense that it could be a much better weapon if it had like a slight damage buff. Like overall, the TTK is all right, but you're going to get better TTKs out of other weapons like the AMAX, the FFAR, things like that, even like the Krieg and the Farah in some cases. But when you look at the other factors that the M13 brings into the equation, it's pretty decent mobility, it's great velocity, and it's like laser accurate recoil. It's so easy to control. It's almost non-existent yet again. This gun is actually really good. A lot of players like to flock to it just because it is so easy to use. It is, again, very reliable, and you can use it in almost any kind of fight. It's got that faster fire rate, so up close, if you have it out, it's not like a death sentence like it would be if you had the SA-87 out up close. You're probably going to get beamed by an SMG, but the M13 can honestly compete in that situation. And of course, medium range and long range, that's where this thing shines. When it comes to the AUG, you could go about it two ways. You could use it as an SMG with the 9mm ammo. Personally, that's what I like to do just because it's a lot more fast. It's a bit more agile in that sense, and I don't want to be running a heavy secondary, whereas if you had the 5.56 ammo on there, it's gonna, bog you down a little bit. You're gonna be a bit slower, so I prefer to use the 9mm ammo. The TTK is definitely gonna be a bit slower compared to using the AR conversion, but when it comes to an SMG TTK, the AUG is actually still pretty competitive. Again, it's very easy to use up close, like all around. I'm liking the AUG quite a bit. It's definitely, it's a sleeper in the SMG category, you could say. When it comes to the M13's attachments here, though, I'm running the monolithic suppressor. I know, very big surprise. We've got the marksman barrel for better range and control, the tac laser, the blue dot hollow sight, and then also the 60-round mags. You don't need that underbarrel on this just because it's so easy to use. And then on the Modern Warfare AUG, we've got the suppressor that is indeed monolithic, the 407mm barrel, the Merc foregrip for that better control, and then also that hipfire accuracy, the 32-round mags, and then also the stippled grip tape. Then this next loadout, I would say, is definitely the highest skill loadout. You definitely need to be pretty good at the game in order to fully utilize this one. It's the EBR, then also the AK-74U. Overall, the AK-74U isn't really that hard to use. Personally, I use the collector's item variant, and the iron sights on that are actually really clean. I like those a lot. And for a close range SMG, this is going to be pretty good. Of course, the last update partially buffed it and partially nerfed it, so it's just a mid-tier SMG. You can't go wrong with it. Like I said, very easy to use. Its damage is pretty good. The mobility is fantastic. Then primarily what we want to focus on here is the EBR. The skill gap on this thing is pretty high. Like, if you're a beginner player, this is going to be a harder weapon to use. If your aim is a bit shaky here and there, especially in medium and longer fights, it's going to be a pretty difficult weapon to master. But if you can get your aim on point, if you can really figure out how to, hit your shots with this thing, it is by far one of the best guns in the game. I'm sure you guys have seen the videos recently with it being a quote-unquote one-shot kill. Spoiler alert, it's not a one-shot kill. You can put stopping power on this thing and it's a two-shot kill, potentially a one-shot kill if they're not full armor. But even without stopping power, this thing is going to be extremely lethal if you're able to land your shots. Obviously, it's semi-auto. The visual kick on it when you shoot is not the most ideal, so it's harder to stay on target. But once you master it, once you're figuring out how to, actually use this in certain fights, whether it be some close range ones that are a bit more awkward, or primarily some medium range fights, which is where I think it's the best, this thing will melt, especially if you can consistently aim for the chest or the head. You're gonna fry with this thing. Like I said, harder to use, but it's high risk, high reward, and if you can master it, it's gonna pay off for sure. Here, we're using the monolithic suppressor, the 22-inch barrel for better range and control, the VOK 3x optic that's more so preference-based. You could use like a sniper scope on this thing if you wanted to. You could use a hollow sight, a red dot. That all comes down to what you're most comfortable with. I've also got the chassis elite stock for better mobility, and then also the focus perk, just because this is going to help me stay on target more if I'm getting shot at. If I get hit, my flinch is not going to be as severe. And then on the AK-74U, we've got the sound suppressor just so it's better up close. Obviously, we stay off the minimap, but we also get some better mobility. I've got the Task Force barrel, no brainer, by far the best barrel on all the Cold War SMGs. We've got the Tiger Team Spotlight for better mobility, the Bruiser Grip for better mobility, and also the 50-round drum to round things out. And then the last weapon that I wanted to look at is simply the AN-94 from Modern Warfare. No specific secondary here. You could use the AK-74U. You could use some of the other secondaries, the MP7, the P90, whatever you want to on this one. I just wanted to throw this one in there to round out a nice even 5 best. And honestly, the AN-94 is another one of these rifles that might not look the best on paper. It doesn't have some insane stats, but it's pretty reliable in game. Like, if you're accurate with it, it is going to be decent to use in close range fights. It's got the hyper burst feature, so it can actually compete up close. If you're landing your shots there, you can fry with it. Medium range, the recoil is not too hard to control, and even long range, The damage drop-off is not super severe, it's relatively forgiving, so this thing is viable in all different types of fights. I like using it a lot, definitely very underrated in my opinion. It's no AN-94 from Black Ops 2, that thing was a beast, but this thing is definitely very viable as it stands. Here, once again, I am running the monolithic suppressor alongside the X438mm barrel, the Commando foregrip, the 60-round mags, then finally the VOK 3x optic. So yeah, if you're looking to spice things up, if you're looking to use something a bit different from what you're usually using in Warzone, I would highly recommend trying out any of these loadouts. I had a lot of fun using these in game. But that is going to wrap things up for today. If you enjoyed the video, let me know by dropping a like on it. And of course, if you're new here or if you haven't already subscribed, I am always covering everything going on in COD. So feel free to subscribe. That way you can always stay up to date with the latest news, intel, updates, loadouts, and pretty much everything else in between. As always, if you want to check out any of my partners, be sure to use code WhosImmortal for a discount on all Scuff, G Fuel, Gamer Advantage, and Control Freak products. And the links for all those can be found down in the description below. But once again, thanks so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.